Hi. So, still reading The Illuminaries by Eleanor Catton, and there's a passage in there that I felt would be really nice to share because it's so relatable. Okay, so here's the story. At last he turned on his heel and made to leave. In the doorway, he reached back for the handle to pull the door shut behind him, but he did it slowly and watched them through the narrowing crack. Gascoigne began moving just before the door was quite closed. He spun towards Anna and opened his arms for an embrace, and Anna fell into him, her pale cheek rising to fit into the curve of his neck. Gascoigne wrapped his arms strongly about her waist, and Anna's body went limp. He lifted her so that her toes trailed on the floor. She was clasped against him. He lowered his head and pressed his cheek against her hair. His jaw was clenched. His eyes were open. He breathed fiercely through his nose. Pritchard, with his eye at the door, was overcome with loneliness. He felt he had never loved, and that no soul had ever loved him. He shut the door as softly as he could and padded down the stairs. I'll skip that part because that's a bit of a distraction. Now back to the story. It was still early in the afternoon when Pritchard returned to his drug hall on Collingwood Street, but he felt that it ought to be much later. That night ought to be falling, to make sense of the exhaustion that he felt. He entered by way of the shop and spent a foolish moment straightening the razor strops with the corners of the shelves, and tidying the bottles so that they stood shoulder to shoulder against the lip of the display cabinet. But suddenly he could not bear himself. He set a card in the shop window informing callers to return on Monday, locked the door, and retired to his laboratory. There were several orders set out upon his desk to be made up, but he gazed down at the forms almost without seeing them. He took off his jacket and hung it on the hook beside the range. He tied his apron about his waist by habit. Then he stood and gazed at nothing. I feel like that's so sparsely, succinctly, and masterfully written. I just enjoyed how almost soothing that passage was, how validating I think it is to feel at loss and not to say be okay with it, but to understand that this is something that we go through and something that's uncomfortable. And I like the fact that he kind of tried to fix situation, but also he allowed himself this moments of just, oh, like just nothing, just giving himself space, whether deliberately or not. Actually, this passage also is quite powerful, but I will leave this at that and continue. Hopefully, that I could get halfway through by tomorrow because I'm leaving this place in 3 days. Wish me luck.